The email arrived on a quiet Friday morning. No greeting, no apology, just one sentence. Your name has been removed from the guest list. I stood in the kitchen, holding a mug that had already gone cold. Outside, the rain was doing what it always does in England, soft, persistent, almost polite. I read the sentence again, then a third time. It did not say there had been a mistake. It did not say there was a misunderstanding. It did not say they would explain later. It simply stated a fact. As if my absence had already been agreed upon by everyone else. The wedding was tomorrow. A wedding held at a manor house in Surrey. Stone walls, long tables, white flowers. The kind of place families choose when they want to be seen as respectable. It was my sister-in-law's wedding, and I was the one who paid for it, every invoice, every deposit, every final payment, the venue, the catering, the music, the flowers, the photographer, all in my name, all from my account, and yet my name no longer belonged in the room. I did not reply. I did not call my husband. I did not message my mother-in-law. I did not ask what I had done wrong. I simply stood there, listening to the rain tap against the window, and noticed something strange. I was not shocked. I was not angry. I was not even hurt in the way I expected. What I felt instead was a kind of quiet clarity, because this was not a mistake. This was not an oversight. This was not about seating arrangements or family politics. This was a decision. A decision made after the money had already left my account, after the contracts had been signed, after everything had been paid for. They had taken my place, but they had kept my payment. And in that moment, something inside me went very still. If you have ever been made to feel like an outsider in a family you helped hold together, comment number 1 now, and listen carefully. Because this story is not about shouting. It is not about revenge the loud way. It is about what happens when the person who stays quiet finally stops paying. And what follows is something they never expected. I married into the family quietly. No grand ceremony. No speeches about love or unity. Just a registry office in a neighbouring town and a polite lunch where everyone behaved as if they were being carefully watched. At first, I told myself the distance was temporary, that families like this needed time to adjust, time to accept someone new. Every Sunday afternoon we gathered for tea. The same house, the same table, the same china cups with thin blue edges, handled as if they were more important than the people holding them. My mother-in-law poured the tea herself, always in the same order, herself first, then my husband, then the others. My cup was filled last. She would smile and ask, "Did you find the road easily?" I always did. I always said yes. Even when I knew the question was not really about directions. I chose my words carefully, careful not to sound too confident, careful not to sound too foreign. My accent had softened over the years, but not enough to disappear, not enough to go unnoticed. Dinner followed the same pattern. Polite conversation, safe topics, weather, neighbours, property prices. They spoke about schools they attended, families they knew, places that sounded like unspoken passwords. No one asked how work was going. No one asked how it felt to live so far from my own family. No one asked what it had taken to build a life from nothing in a country that was never meant to be mine. But once the plates were cleared, once the table had been wiped clean, the questions changed. "So," my sister-in-law said one evening, stirring her tea slowly, "have you heard back from the venue yet? Not, are you tired? Not, are you managing all right? Just logistics, numbers, payments." At first I explained it to myself. They were reserved, traditional, an English family that valued restraint. They did not speak about feelings. They expressed care differently. So I adjusted myself. I dressed more simply, chose neutral colours. Nothing that stood out too much. I laughed a little less loudly, spoke a little more softly, listened more than I talked. When my mother-in-law spoke about how things were done properly in this family, I nodded. When my sister-in-law joked about how lucky I was to have married into stability, I smiled. I told myself belonging was something you earned slowly, through patience, through gratitude, through knowing your place. But there were moments I could not ignore. One afternoon, as we sat around the table with half-eaten scones, my mother-in-law turned to me and said, almost casually, "Have you confirmed the deposit for the flowers?" No greeting, no concern. Just that. I answered, yes. It was transferred yesterday. She nodded, satisfied, and turned back to her tea. She did not ask if I was well. She did not thank me. The conversation continued without me. Another time, my sister-in-law leaned closer, lowered her voice and said, "The caterer mentioned an upgrade. It would suit the venue better. You do not mind, do you?" She smiled as she said it, as if the answer was already decided. For a brief moment I felt it, a tightening in my chest, a quiet resistance. Then I heard myself say, "That is fine." My husband sat beside me. He did not look up. He did not speak. Later, in the car, he said gently, "They do not mean anything by it. They are just particular." I nodded. I always nodded, because questioning felt impolite, because disagreeing felt disruptive, because I did not want to confirm what they already suspected, that I did not quite belong. I began to notice something else. When money was discussed, everyone looked at me. When family history was discussed, they looked past me. I was present, but not included. Useful, but never essential. And still, I tried harder, to be smaller, quieter, easier to place in the room. I did not realize then that I was slowly erasing myself. I thought I was learning how to fit in. In truth, I was learning how to disappear without ever being asked to leave. It happened on a Sunday evening. Dinner had just finished. The plates were still on the table. No one was in a hurry to clear them away. My sister-in-law sat very still, too still. Her hands were folded in her lap. Her eyes were red, not from crying loudly, but from holding something back. My mother-in-law noticed first. She tilted her head slightly. "What is it, love?" That was all it took. My sister-in-law's face crumpled. Tears came quickly then, messy, uncontrolled. "I just wanted it to be special," she said. Her voice broke halfway through the sentence. "I do not want anything extravagant. I just want it to feel right." No one spoke. My father-in-law stared at the table. My husband shifted slightly in his chair. My mother-in-law reached for a tissue, placed it gently in my sister-in-law's hand. They let her cry. They did not interrupt her. She talked about the venue, about how long she had dreamed of that day, about how other people always seemed to manage beautiful weddings, while she felt as if everything was slipping through her fingers. "It is just so expensive," she said softly. "Everything adds up so quickly." The room stayed quiet. Not uncomfortable, not awkward, expectant. I felt it before I saw it. The pause, the stillness, the moment stretching just a little too long. Then my mother-in-law looked up. Not at her daughter, at me. She did not say my name. She did not need to. Everyone else followed. One by one, their eyes shifted in my direction. No one asked a question. No one made a suggestion. They simply waited. I remember thinking how strange it was, that a room full of adults could say so much without speaking at all. My sister-in-law wiped her eyes. She looked at me then, as if suddenly remembering I was there. "I am sorry," she said quickly. "I did not mean to make it awkward. I know everyone is doing their best." Her words were polite, her tone was careful, but the expectation did not disappear. It sat there, heavy, patient. I glanced at my husband. He gave me a small smile, the kind meant to reassure. "You have always been good with finances," my mother-in-law said. Her voice was calm, reasonable, almost kind. "You understand how these things work." It did not sound like a request. It sounded like a conclusion. I felt something tighten in my chest. Not fear, not anger, responsibility. I asked one question, just one. How much is still missing? There was a brief pause. My sister-in-law hesitated, then named a number. It was not small. No one reacted. No one gasped. No one said it was too much. They all looked at me again. I took a breath. I can cover it, I said, if it helps. My sister-in-law let out a soft sob of relief. My mother-in-law smiled faintly. That would take such a weight off all of us, she said. I continued, but I would like the contracts to be in my name, just for clarity. The room shifted slightly. Not resistance, not objection. More like surprise. Of course, my mother-in-law replied after a moment. That makes sense. No one argued, no one questioned it. My sister-in-law nodded eagerly. Thank you, she said. Her voice was still shaky. I waited. I do not know what I was waiting for exactly. Perhaps a longer pause, perhaps a different tone, perhaps something that acknowledged what I had just agreed to. But the moment passed quickly. The conversation moved on. They discussed dates. They discussed menus. They discussed colours. My role had already changed. I was no longer a guest. I was no longer family. I was a solution. When the evening ended, my mother-in-law stood up, gathered the plates and said, "Well, that is a relief. Now we can finally move forward." She did not look at me when she said it. No one did. There was no thank you. No awkward acknowledgement. No recognition of what had just happened. It was as if my agreement had simply restored the natural order of things. In the car on the way home, my husband reached for my hand. "That was very generous of you," he said quietly. I nodded. I told myself that generosity did not need applause, that families helped each other, that this was normal. Still, as the streetlights passed by, one after another, I could not shake the feeling that something important had shifted. I had offered help. They had accepted entitlement. And no one, not once, had stopped to say, "Thank you." After that evening, everything moved quickly, too quickly. The emails started coming in. From the venue, from the florist, from the planner, always addressed to me, always polite, always precise. I signed contracts during lunch breaks, approved designs between meetings, transferred deposits while standing on train platforms. It felt efficient, organised, professional, and still, something felt off. I was copied into conversations, but never invited into discussions. Decisions were made, then forwarded to me, as information, not as questions. The table layout arrived one afternoon. I scanned the names out of habit, front tables, immediate family, close friends. I did not look for my name, not at first. I assumed it was there, somewhere sensible, somewhere unobtrusive. When I finally noticed it was missing, I told myself it was temporary, an early draft, nothing more. The dress fittings happened without me. So did the menu tasting, so did the final walk-through at the venue. Each time I was told after, briefly, casually. It went well. They were happy. Everything is sorted now. I nodded. I always nodded. There was no argument to have, nothing concrete to object to. Then came the final contracts, the ones marked urgent, the ones that required signatures by the end of the day. I read them carefully, every clause, every condition. My name was there, my details, my responsibility. I signed. That evening, as I was leaving the office, my phone vibrated. A message from my mother-in-law. "We have made a few final adjustments." That was all it said. I replied simply, "Of course." The updated schedule arrived an hour later. Ceremony, reception, speeches, photographs. I read it once. Then again. There was no mention of me, no role, no seat, no place. Still I said nothing. It was not until the guest list arrived, attached as a separate file, that I understood. My name was not there. Not under family, not under extended family, not under anything at all. It was as if I had never existed. I sat at my kitchen table, the file open on my screen, and waited for a reaction that did not come. I did not feel panic. I did not feel anger. I felt something quieter, recognition. They had waited. They had waited until the contracts were signed, until the deposits were locked in, until everything was secured. Only then had the decision been finalized. I remembered the conversations, the careful wording, the polite distance. This had not been sudden. It had been planned. I thought of my sister-in-law, choosing colours and flowers, my mother-in-law, discussing traditions and appearances, all without me. I thought of how often I had been told, "It is easier this way." Easier for whom? I closed the file. The next morning I received another message. "We hope you understand. It is not personal. It is just about keeping the right atmosphere." I stared at the words for a long moment. Atmosphere. I had paid for it, every part of it, and yet there was no room for me inside it. If you have ever realized too late that a decision was made without you, comment number 2 now, and keep listening. Because this was the moment I stopped assuming I was included, and quietly began to understand what they had always intended. I heard it by accident. That is how these things are usually said. Not directly, not with intent to be overheard. I had stepped back into the hallway to take a call. The door to the sitting room was not fully closed, just enough for voices to travel. I recognized my mother-in-law's tone first, measured, lowered. The kind she used when she wanted to sound reasonable. "I just worry she might feel uncomfortable," she said. "It is a particular sort of day." Someone else replied. "A cousin, I think." Her voice was lighter, almost amused. "Yes, she does stand out a bit, does she not?" There was a pause, then a small laugh. "It is nothing personal," my mother-in-law continued. "It is just about atmosphere, tradition, you understand." Another voice joined in. Quiet, careful. "She has been very helpful, though." Helpful. That word lingered. Then the sentence that settled everything. "She does not quite fit. Not for something like this." No one raised their voice. No one sounded cruel. They spoke as if they were discussing table linen, or weather, or the suitability of flowers. I stood there, my phone still in my hand, and waited for something to rise in me. Anger. Hurt. Shame. None of it came. What I felt instead was clarity. They were not confused. They were not conflicted. They were not being careless. They were being precise. This was not about one comment or one misunderstanding. This was about belonging. Who was allowed to be seen? Who was allowed to be displayed? Who was allowed to be associated with the family on a day meant to be remembered? I thought about the way tea was poured, about the order, about the questions that were never asked, about how my accent was always noticed, even when it was never mentioned, about how I had been described: practical, reliable, good with money, never warm, never natural, never quite one of them. I did not step back into the room. I did not interrupt. I did not correct anyone. I let the conversation finish without me. Later that evening, my sister-in-law spoke to me with her usual brightness. "We are just trying to keep things simple," she said. "You understand, do you not?" I nodded, because understanding did not require agreement, and agreement was no longer my concern. That night I lay awake and replayed the words, not with bitterness, not with disbelief, with attention. They had told me the truth, quietly, politely, in the way families like theirs always do. They did not think I belonged in the pictures. They did not think I matched the story they wanted to present. And suddenly, so many things made sense. The careful distance, the selective invitations, the way decisions happened elsewhere. I did not cry. Crying would have suggested surprise. I had simply been listening too late. If you have ever realized that politeness can hide exclusion, comment number 3 now and keep listening. Because once you hear words like these, you cannot unhear them. And once you understand what they mean, you begin to see everything else more clearly. The email arrived the next morning, not early, not late, just after 9. I noticed the subject line first, final guest list. I did not open it straight away. I finished my coffee, rinsed the mug, put it upside down on the rack. Then I sat at the table and clicked. The message was brief. Thank you for your patience. Please find the final guest list attached. I scrolled slowly, deliberately. I had learned by then that nothing in this family was accidental. The attachment loaded, rows of names, neatly organized, grouped by category, immediate family, extended family, close friends, family friends. I read from the top. My husband's name was there, of course, my sister-in-law, her fiancé, their parents, their grandparents, cousins, aunts, uncles, people I had met, people I had only heard about. I kept reading. I reached the end of the first page. My name was not there. I told myself not to jump to conclusions, that this was probably alphabetical or incomplete. I scrolled again, more slowly this time. I checked every section, every column, nothing. I went back to the email, no explanation, no note, no comment, just the file. I sat there for a moment, waiting for something familiar, shock, anger, the urge to call someone immediately. None of it came. Instead, I opened the attachment again, and I read it properly this time, not as a family member, but as someone trained to read documents. I noticed what was there and what was not. There was no category for in-laws, no category for spouses by marriage. There was no place that could have held my name. It had not been forgotten. It had been designed. My phone buzzed, a message from my mother-in-law. We hope you will understand. It is not personal. We are just trying to keep the right atmosphere. I read that sentence once, then again, right atmosphere. I did not reply. I opened the email again and read it from the beginning, one line at a time. Thank you for your patience. As if waiting had been my role. Please find the final guest list attached. Final. Not draft. Not provisional. Final. I thought about the contracts, the signatures, the deposits that could no longer be reversed. I thought about the meetings I had not attended, the fittings I had not been invited to, the decisions that had arrived already made. This was not sudden. This was timing. They had waited until everything was secure, until nothing could be questioned, until it was too late to negotiate. Only then had my name been removed. I closed my laptop. Not abruptly, not with force, carefully. I sat back in my chair and looked around the room, the quiet kitchen, the clock on the wall, the ordinary morning that had not changed at all, and yet something fundamental had shifted. This was no longer about a wedding. It was about visibility, about who was allowed to be seen as part of the family story. I thought about my accent, the way conversations always paused just slightly after I spoke. I thought about how often I had been described as practical, reliable, capable, never as family. I remembered the phrase I had heard the night before. She does not quite fit. This was what they meant. I did not cry. Crying would have implied loss. What I felt instead was confirmation. They had shown me exactly where I stood, not in anger, not in cruelty, but in organisation, in formatting, in a file sent at 9 in the morning. I picked up my phone again and typed a reply. Thank you for letting me know. I did not add anything else. No question, no objection, no emotion. Then I stopped, deleted it. I did not send anything at all, because the moment I replied, I would be participating, and I was no longer sure that I wanted to. If you have ever realized that your absence was carefully planned, comment number 4 now, and keep listening, because this was the moment I stopped waiting to be included, and quietly began to prepare for what came next. I did not confront anyone, not that day, not the next. Instead, I opened my laptop. The same one I used for work. The same one that held spreadsheets, risk reports, and contracts that decided the fate of other people's money. I searched for a folder I already knew by heart. Wedding. Inside it were subfolders: venue, catering, florist, music, coordination, everything neatly labelled, everything dated, everything signed. My name was on every document. Not in small print, not as a reference, as the payer, as the contracting party. I opened the first contract: the venue, stone walls, historic grounds, non-refundable deposit. I read it line by line, slowly, carefully. Clause 8, termination. The right to cancel, the notice period, the conditions, my name again. I moved to the next document: catering, minimum numbers, upgrade options, final confirmation deadline, again, my name. The florist, the musicians, the planner, all the same. I stopped reading for a moment, not because I was overwhelmed, but because something had shifted. I had spent days feeling excluded, removed, erased, and yet on paper, nothing had been taken from me. I was still the decision maker. I had simply never looked. I continued. Emails, attachments, payment confirmations. Each one told the same story. They had organised, they had chosen, they had assumed, but they had not paid. And payment, I knew, was not a gesture. It was leverage. I thought back to every meeting I had missed, every update delivered after the fact, every phrase that sounded polite but final. It is easier this way. Everything is already sorted. They were not careless, they were confident. Confident that I would not check, confident that I would not question, confident that I would continue to behave as I always had, grateful, quiet, useful. I scrolled to the last document, the master agreement, the one that linked everything together. I read it twice. The cancellation terms were clear, the consequences precise. There was no ambiguity, no loophole, just procedure. I closed the file and leaned back in my chair. For the first time in days, my chest felt steady. Not lighter, not relieved, steady. This was not about revenge. Not yet. It was about position. They had removed my name from a list. They had not removed it from the contracts. I had been invisible socially, but I was indispensable legally. That was the difference. I looked at the calendar. The wedding was less than 2 weeks away. Every vendor was already committed, every schedule locked in, and every one of them answered to me. I did not smile. I did not feel triumphant. I felt awake. I realized then that my silence had been mistaken for weakness. In reality, it had been preparation. I opened a blank document, not to write an argument, not to draft a confrontation, just to make notes. Names, numbers, deadlines. I picked up my phone and saved a few contacts: the planner, the venue manager, the catering coordinator, all people who had addressed me politely, professionally, and without question, because money, unlike family, was very clear about who it belonged to. I closed my laptop, slowly, deliberately. I did not need to act yet. Knowing was enough. If you have ever realized that the rules protected you all along, comment number 5 now and keep listening. Because this was the moment I stopped reacting and started deciding. I did not tell anyone what I had discovered, not my mother, not a friend, not even my husband. I went about my days as usual. Work, meetings, emails, deadlines. At home, everything stayed quiet. Too quiet. My husband did not ask how I was. He did not mention the guest list. He did not explain the decision his family had made. He behaved as if nothing required discussion, as if my absence did not deserve words. One evening, I asked him carefully, "When did you know?" He paused. "Not long. Just long enough to be deliberate." "They thought it would be easier this way," he said. "They did not want any tension. That was all. No apology, no explanation, no attempt to soften it." He did not ask how I felt. He did not say he disagreed. He did not say he had tried to stop it. He simply repeated their decision as if it had arrived fully formed, and he had only carried it into the room. I nodded, and something settled heavily in my chest. Not anger, disappointment. Because I remembered a different version of him. I remembered when I first arrived in this country. New job, new systems, new rules I did not yet understand. I remembered how he stayed late with me after work, explaining reports, introducing me to people, teaching me how things worked here. He had corrected my emails, warned me about office politics, defended me when someone underestimated me. Back then, he had been patient, protective, present. I remembered thinking that I was lucky, that I had found someone who knew how to stand beside me, and yet inside his family, he had never done that. Not once. When his mother spoke in circles, he stayed quiet. When decisions were made without me, he stayed neutral. When my name disappeared, he stayed out of it. He had helped me survive a new country, but he had never helped me survive his family. That realization did not hurt sharply. It dulled something. I nodded again. There was nothing to argue with, nothing to correct. Silence, I realized, was already the language they had chosen. So I adopted it. The next morning I opened my inbox. I drafted the first email. Subject: confirmation. Dear Sarah, I am writing to confirm that all decisions regarding the wedding arrangements should be addressed directly to me as per the signed agreement. Kind regards. I read it once, then sent it. The reply came quickly. Of course, thank you for confirming. I did not respond. I wrote the second email, shorter. Dear James, please confirm the final cancellation window as stated in clause 8. Best regards. No emotion, no explanation, just procedure. Then the third. Dear Emily, could you please confirm the current status of all payments received? Thank you. Each message was sent calmly, precisely, as if this were any other project. Because to me, it was. At home, my husband watched me from across the room. He did not ask what I was doing. He did not ask who I was emailing. He did not ask anything at all. Later that night, he said, "They are under a lot of pressure." I looked at him, waited. He said nothing more. That silence confirmed what I already knew. They had decided. He had accepted. And I was expected to adjust. I did not raise my voice. I did not accuse him. I returned to my screen. Replies began to arrive. Confirmed, attached, please see below. Each one tightened the shape of what was coming. I did not rush. I marked dates, times, deadlines. I waited until every confirmation was in place, until there was no confusion, no ambiguity. Then I drafted one final email. It was the shortest of all. Dear all, please proceed according to the terms outlined in the contract. Further instructions will follow. Kind regards. I did not send it immediately. I saved it, closed my laptop, and went to bed. Sleep came easily, not because I was calm, but because I was no longer uncertain. In the morning, my husband left early. No goodbye, no conversation. On the table, his phone buzzed once, then again. I did not look. That was not my role anymore. I sent the email. Just one click. No announcement, no warning, nothing dramatic, only confirmation. If you have ever realized that silence can be a decision, comment number 6 now and keep listening. Because this was the moment everything began to move, quietly, irreversibly. The morning of the wedding began quietly, too quietly. I woke up early, not because I was nervous, not because I was excited, out of habit. The house was still, the light outside the window was pale, the kind of grey England knows well. My phone lay on the table, face down, silent. I made coffee, stood by the window, watched a delivery van slow at the corner, then drive on. I checked the time, 7:30. The ceremony was scheduled for 11. At 8:15 my phone buzzed, one message, then another. I did not open them. At 8:20, it rang. I answered. "It's me," the planner said. Her voice was professional, but tighter than usual. "Have you heard from the florist?" I paused. "It seems they are delayed," she continued. "They have not arrived yet." I said, "Thank you for letting me know," and ended the call. I did not need to be there to understand what that meant. At 9, my phone buzzed again. A missed call, then another. I did not answer. At 9:10, a message appeared. "The flowers still haven't arrived." I placed the phone back on the table. I pictured the entrance hall, bare. No arrangements to frame the photographs. No centerpieces to distract the eye. The kind of detail my mother-in-law would notice instantly. The kind of detail she would not forgive. At 9:20, the planner called again. Her voice was lower now, more careful. "The musicians have stopped," she said. "They're waiting for confirmation." I asked one question. "Have people started asking why?" There was a pause. "Yes," she said. "The family is asking." I did not ask who. I already knew. In families like theirs, questions were never loud at first. They began as soft comments, as polite concern, as careful phrasing. "Is everything all right, dear?" Just checking, only wondering. And then the tone changed. At 9:25, another message arrived. "Your mother-in-law is here now. She is not happy." Nothing more. No description needed. At 9:30, another call. "This time it's catering," the planner said. "They're holding until they receive instruction." Instruction. I said, "Please proceed according to the contract." She hesitated, not because she disagreed, but because she knew the room she was standing in. Then she said, "Understood." At 9:35, my husband called. I let it ring twice, then answered. "Where are you?" he said. Not hello. Not "Are you all right?" Just that. His voice was controlled but strained. "I'm at home," I replied. There was a pause, a sound in the background, muffled voices, movement. "They're asking questions," he said. "About what?" I asked. He did not answer directly. "The planner keeps saying she needs confirmation. Mum is saying this is embarrassing. People are arriving." He stopped there as if that was the worst part. Not that I was missing. That people could see something was wrong. I said, "Is there anything you need from me?" Another pause. "No," he said. Then quieter. "Can you just sort it?" Sort it. As if that were the natural order of things. As if I existed only to correct what threatened their image. I said, "I will follow the contract." I could hear his breath change. Then he said, "Right," and ended the call. At 9:40, the planner called again. "They're starting to whisper now," she said. I could picture it without effort. Guests standing in small clusters, drinks in hand, smiles held too long, aunties leaning closer, cousins pretending they were not listening. In England, panic often looks like politeness. At 9:42, a message came through. Someone asked if the florist has been in an accident. Another message, seconds later. Someone else joked that the wedding is cursed. A joke, but not a funny one. The kind people make when they feel nervous and want to sound above it. At 9:45, the planner called again. "I need to tell you something," she said. Her voice was careful, as if she was choosing each word. "Your mother-in-law is asking for a written confirmation from the contracting party. She says she needs to show it to the venue manager." The contracting party, the phrase sounded clinical, neutral, but I knew what it meant in that room. It meant your name is not on this. Your authority is not real here, and yet you need her to rescue you. I said, "Send me the request by email." "Thank you," she said quickly, and ended the call. At 9:50, my phone buzzed again. A long message from the planner. "Guests have arrived early. The entrance is still bare. The musicians are waiting. Your mother-in-law is requesting immediate clarity. Your sister-in-law is in a side room. She is upset." I read it once, then set the phone down. At 10, another message arrived. "They're trying to keep things calm, but everyone knows something is wrong." I imagined my mother-in-law moving through the room with a fixed smile saying the same phrase repeatedly. It's just a minor mix-up. Nothing to worry about. These things happen. In a house like that, appearances were not decoration. They were identity. At 10:10 the planner called. Her voice sounded different again, less composed. Your sister-in-law is asking why you aren't here, she said. She is saying you should be here if you are paying. I said nothing. The planner continued. Your mother-in-law told her to stop saying that in front of people. There it was, the fear of being heard. At 10:15, a text from my husband. Please answer. Mum is asking for you. No please before, no kindness, just urgency. At 10:20, the planner called again. The venue manager has asked for confirmation in writing, she said. They will not release the florist booking without it. The musicians are asking whether they should leave. Catering is waiting. Everyone is watching me. Watching. Not the bride, not the groom, the planner, because she was the only visible person who could be blamed. I asked, are guests talking openly now? She exhaled. Yes, she said, they are not being unkind, but they are noticing. Noticing. That was the word. Noticing that something was missing. Noticing that a family so proud of its control was suddenly exposed. At 10:30, a message arrived. The atmosphere is tense. At 10:35, another. Someone said they have never seen a wedding start this late here. At 10:40, another. They are asking who is actually paying for all of this. At 10:45, the planner called one last time. I've spoken to your husband again, she said. He stepped outside to take the call. I closed my eyes for a moment. I did not need to hear the words. The fact that it was happening in the open was enough. Her tone shifted. Less reporting. More acknowledgement. They are beginning to realize who the contracting party is. I thanked her and ended the call. At 10:50, a message from the planner. The ceremony cannot start. At 10:55, another. Your mother-in-law is asking me to find another solution. There is no other solution. At 11, the time it was meant to begin, my phone went quiet. Not because things had been resolved, but because there was nothing left to explain. In the end, silence is what arrives when the story can no longer be controlled. I sat down at the table. I did not smile. I did not feel relieved. I simply observed. If you have ever watched something fall apart without raising your voice, comment number 7 now and keep listening, because this was only the beginning. By 11:15, the room could no longer pretend. The chairs were filled, the guests were seated. The ceremony space was silent. No flowers, no music, no movement forward, only waiting. The planner stood near the front, clipboard held close to her chest. She had stopped smiling. At first, people assumed this was still a delay, a technical issue, a scheduling problem, something that could be smoothed over. But as the minutes passed, the tone shifted. Whispers grew less careful. Someone coughed, someone else checked their watch openly. A woman in the second row leaned toward her neighbour. This is very unusual, she said. I have never seen it handled like this. Another voice replied, perhaps they are waiting for someone important. That word lingered. Important. The groom adjusted his tie. Again. Then again. The bride sat rigid, hands clasped too tightly in her lap. Her mother dabbed her eyes, then stopped, realizing tears were not appropriate yet. At 11:20, the venue manager stepped forward. He did not rush. He did not apologize. He simply cleared his throat. The planner moved aside, giving him space. That was the moment the room noticed something was wrong. When staff stop deferring and start addressing the room directly, control has already shifted. Ladies and gentlemen, the venue manager said, thank you for your patience. His voice was calm, measured, unemotional. There appears to be a contractual matter that must be clarified before we can proceed. A murmur ran through the rows. Contractual. The groom looked toward his mother. She avoided his eyes. What kind of matter? someone asked quietly. The venue manager did not answer immediately. He looked at the planner. She nodded, and then she spoke. For transparency, she said, several services associated with today's event have been placed on hold. Her voice carried. These services include floral arrangements, musicians, and catering. The bride's head snapped up. What do you mean on hold? She asked. The planner did not look at her. She looked at the room. They are on hold pending authorization from the contracting party. The phrase landed differently this time, not abstract, not technical. Someone in the back repeated it softly. The contracting party? A pause followed. The planner held it. She had spent weeks smoothing tensions, explaining delays, protecting feelings. Now, she stopped. The individual who signed the agreements and authorized payment. Silence, not confusion, recognition. People began to look around, not for the bride, not for the groom, for someone else. A woman in the third row frowned. But isn't that family handled? Another guest leaned closer. I thought the sister-in-law was paying, someone whispered. Or the brother. The planner shook her head. No, she said. Those assumptions are incorrect. The groom stood up. This is ridiculous, he said. There must be a mistake. The venue manager remained still. There is no mistake, he replied. We have reviewed the contracts this morning. The planner continued, her voice steady now. The contracting party has not authorized us to proceed at this time. A ripple moved through the room, not loud, but unmistakable. Who is the contracting party? Someone asked. The planner took a breath. She did not raise her voice. She did not dramatize it. She simply stated it. It is your sister-in-law. The room changed, not in a single moment, but in many small ones. Heads turned, eyes narrowed, postures shifted. Someone let out a quiet sound of surprise, then covered their mouth. Her? A voice whispered. The one who isn't here? The planner nodded. Yes. The bride stood up. This is a misunderstanding, she said. She said she would handle everything. The planner met her gaze. She has handled everything, she replied, until now. Another pause, this one heavier. The bride's mother looked around, searching for support. The groom's father cleared his throat. Why would she do this? He asked, trying to sound reasonable. The planner did not answer that question. She did not speculate. She did not accuse. She simply returned to procedure. Our role, she said, is to act according to the agreement signed. Without authorization from the contracting party, we cannot continue. Someone in the back laughed, not because it was funny, because it was uncomfortable. Is she even invited? Another guest asked, too loudly. The question hung there. The planner did not answer. She did not need to. The absence spoke louder than any confirmation. The bride's hands began to shake. This is humiliating, she said, voice cracking, in front of everyone. Her mother leaned toward her. Lower your voice, she whispered urgently. Lower your voice. That instinct again. At 11:30, the venue manager stepped in once more. If authorization is not received shortly, we will need to formally suspend the event. Suspend. Not cancel. Not postpone. Suspend. A word that suggested control had moved elsewhere. The groom turned toward his mother. You said this was sorted, he said. She did not answer. Her face had gone pale. For the first time that morning, someone asked the question that mattered. Why isn't she here? It was not whispered. It was not polite. It was asked plainly. The room waited. No one answered. Because there was no version of the truth that fit the room anymore. At 11:35, the planner's phone buzzed. She glanced at it once, then looked up. I have received confirmation, she said. The room leaned forward, not in hope, in fear. The contracting party has confirmed that she is not authorizing the release of services at this time. The bride let out a sound that was half sob, half disbelief. You cannot do this, she said. She wouldn't. The planner remained calm. She already has. The shift was complete. The looks directed at the family were no longer curious. They were assessing, recalculating. Someone whispered, "So she paid for everything." Another replied, "And they didn't invite her?" A third voice, lower, sharper. "That explains a lot." At 11:40, people began to stand. Not to leave, not yet, but to stretch, to reposition, to see better. The groom sat back down, slowly. His shoulders slumped. This was not an argument. There was no shouting. But something far worse had happened. The story had changed. No longer a celebration. Now, a lesson. At 11:45, the venue manager spoke again. "We will allow a short window for further instruction." He paused. "After that, we will proceed accordingly." Accordingly, a polite way of saying this is no longer yours to control. The planner stepped back. She had said enough. The truth had been delivered without embellishment, without cruelty, just facts. And facts, in rooms built on appearance, are devastating. If you have ever watched a room realize that it has misjudged someone completely, comment number 8 now, and keep listening. Because this was only the first collapse. The first call came minutes after the announcement. I did not answer. The second came almost immediately after. Then the third. I let the phone ring. By the fourth call, the number was familiar. My mother-in-law. I answered on the fifth. Her voice was sharp. "What is going on?" she demanded. "There are people here. This is extremely embarrassing." I said nothing. "You need to fix this," she continued. "Whatever misunderstanding there is, it needs to be resolved now." I waited. She took my silence as resistance. "This is not the time to make a point," she said. "This is a family event." A family event. The phrase sounded rehearsed. I replied calmly, "I was told I should not come, because it was better for the family." There was a pause. "That is not what I meant," she said quickly. "You know what I meant." I said nothing more. She tried again. "People are watching," she said. "They are starting to talk." I repeated it. "I was told my presence would make things awkward." Her tone shifted slightly, less sharp, more controlled. "That was taken out of context," she said. "You are being unreasonable." Unreasonable, the word arrived easily. I waited. She sighed. "Look," she said, "we can discuss this later. Right now, we need you. Need. Not want, not apologize. Need." I answered with the same calm. "I thought it would be easier this way." Silence. Then her breath changed. "You are doing this on purpose," she said. "You are humiliating us." I replied, "I am following the arrangements as they were explained to me." Her voice lowered. "This is not about you," she said. "This is about the family." There it was again. The family, the shield, the excuse. I repeated the words she once used. "They said this is something the family needs to decide." She stopped speaking. For the first time, she did not interrupt. When she spoke again, her voice was different, softer, measured. "You know how these things look," she said. "People will misunderstand." Misunderstand? The same word she had used on me. I said, "I was told you would understand." The line went quiet. Then she spoke more slowly. "Please," she said, "let us sort this out privately." Privately, where nothing would have witnesses. I did not raise my voice. "I am comfortable with how things are now," I said. She inhaled sharply. "Do you realize what this is doing to your husband?" she asked. "He is under a lot of pressure." Pressure. Another familiar word. I replied, "I was told everyone is under pressure." She paused, then tried a different angle. "This is not how family behaves," she said. "You are hurting people." Hurting. The accusation landed, but it did not move me. "I was told my feelings were not the issue," I said. Her breath caught. The silence stretched. Then her voice changed again. This time, it shook. "People are leaving," she said. "They are laughing." Laughing. That word finally broke the composure. "This will follow us," she whispered. "You know how people are." I replied, "I was told appearances matter." There was no response, only breathing. Then she said quietly, "Please, just send the confirmation." Confirmation, not apology, not acknowledgement, just compliance. I said, "I am not comfortable doing that." She exhaled. "Why are you doing this?" she asked, her voice no longer sharp, no longer controlled, just tired. I answered honestly, "I am doing exactly what I was advised to do." The line went dead. Minutes later, another call came through. This time it was my sister-in-law. She did not start with anger. She started with tears. "I do not understand," she cried. "I did nothing to you." I waited. "You promised," she continued. "You said everything was handled." I replied gently. "I was told I should stay away." She sobbed harder. "Everyone is looking at me," she said. "They think this is my fault," I said. "I was told this was not about me." Her crying slowed. Then came the edge. "So you are punishing me?" she asked. I replied, "I am respecting the boundaries set for me." She went quiet, then whispered, "Please, just this once." I repeated the final line, "I think it is better this way." The call ended. I placed the phone back on the table. It did not ring again for a while. If you have ever watched someone reveal who they are only when they need something from you, comment number 9 now and keep listening. Because what came next was not reconciliation. It was exposure. They arrived just after noon. Not together, not calmly, one after another. I did not open the door immediately. I waited until the knocking stopped, until the doorbell rang again, until the urgency could no longer hide itself. Then I opened it. They stood there as if they had rehearsed the order. My husband first, his mother just behind him, my sister-in-law slightly to the side. None of them smiled. None of them looked relieved. The silence between us was heavy, but familiar. My husband spoke first. "We need to talk." I stepped aside. Let them in. We stood in the living room. No one sat down. That detail mattered. My mother-in-law folded her arms. "This has gone far enough," she said. "You have made your point." I looked at her. "I was told not to come," I replied. She frowned. "That is not the same thing," she said. I did not answer. My sister-in-law shifted her weight. "Everyone is asking questions," she said. "They think something is wrong with us." With us. My husband cleared his throat. "This didn't need to happen," he said. "You could have handled it differently." I met his eyes. I followed the arrangement. He looked away. My mother-in-law stepped forward. "You embarrassed the family," she said, publicly. I nodded once. "You said appearances matter." Her mouth tightened. "That is not what this is about," she said quickly. I waited. She did not continue. My sister-in-law's voice broke. "Do you know what today was supposed to be?" she asked. "It was my wedding." I answered calmly. "I was told it would be better if I stayed away." She stared at me. "You could have said something," she said. I tilted my head. "I was not asked." Silence. My husband spoke again. "You didn't even try to fix it," I replied. "I was told this was a family decision." He exhaled sharply. "That doesn't mean you do nothing," he said. I looked at him. "You did nothing." The words landed, and not loudly, but fully. My mother-in-law stepped in quickly. "This is not about blame," she said. "This is about resolving things." Resolving. The word people use when they want to undo consequences. I shook my head. There is nothing to resolve. My sister-in-law shook her head violently. "You can't just walk away," she said. "This affects all of us," I replied. I was told my feelings were not relevant. Her lips parted, then closed again. My husband rubbed his face. "You are being cold," he said. I answered. "I am being clear." My mother-in-law's tone changed, softer, careful. "We never said you weren't part of the family," she said. I looked at her. "You removed my name." She opened her mouth, closed it again. I continued. "You decided without me. You spoke about me without me. You thanked others for what I paid for." She stiffened. "That was a misunderstanding," she said. I did not respond. My sister-in-law whispered, "So this is revenge?" I met her eyes. "This is alignment." My husband frowned. "What does that even mean?" "It means," I said, "I am no longer available to be misunderstood." Silence filled the room again. My mother-in-law straightened. "If you do not authorize the release," she said, "this will follow us." I nodded. I was told consequences were unavoidable. She stepped closer. "You are choosing to break this family," she said. I replied quietly, "You decided where I stood. I am simply accepting it." My sister-in-law began to cry again. "Please," she said, "just send the confirmation." Confirmation. Always that word. Never apology. Never accountability. I shook my head. I am not comfortable doing that. My husband raised his voice. "This is not fair." I did not flinch. Fairness was never part of the discussion. He stopped. The room went still. My mother-in-law spoke one last time. "If you walk away now," she said, "do not expect to come back." I looked at her. I was never inside. No one answered that, because there was nothing to add. My husband spoke quietly. "Zoe, this is it." I nodded. "This is it." They stood there for a moment longer. Then my mother-in-law turned first. Her posture stiff, controlled. My sister-in-law followed, eyes down. My husband hesitated. He looked at me as if searching for something familiar. I did not give it to him. He left. The door closed behind them. The sound was soft, final. I did not sit down immediately. I stood where I was, listening to the quiet return. Not relief, not victory, just certainty. If you have ever chosen clarity over belonging, comment number 10 now and stay with me, because what comes next is not about them anymore. He came back in the evening, not angry, not rushed, quiet. He stood by the door for a moment, as if deciding whether to enter at all. I did not ask where he had been. He took off his jacket, placed it carefully on the chair, straightened it. Small movements, deliberate, as if control could be rebuilt one gesture at a time. We stood in the same room, a familiar distance between us. He spoke without looking at me. "Mum is devastated," he said. I waited. "People are talking," he continued. "This has gone further than anyone expected." I nodded once. He finally looked at me. "You didn't have to take it this far." There it was. Not what happened, not how I felt, only how it looked. I replied calmly. I followed what was decided. He exhaled through his nose. "You could have endured it," he said, "just this once." Endured. The word landed slowly. He continued as if explaining something obvious. "It was only one day, one event. You know how my family is?" I looked at him. "You knew how they were," I said. "You knew how I was treated." He shifted his weight. "This wasn't personal," he said. "They didn't mean it like that." "Didn't mean it." Another familiar phrase. I waited. "You didn't have to make it public," he added. "You could have spoken to me." I answered quietly. "I did speak to you." He frowned. "When?" "When I asked when you knew," I said. "And you said nothing." He looked away. "I didn't want to make things worse," he said. "Worse." I let that sit. "You watch them remove my name," I said. "You watch them thank others for what I paid for." He rubbed his forehead. "I was trying to keep the peace. Peace. Always peace. At my expense." "You asked me to endure it," I said, "so they wouldn't feel uncomfortable." He did not deny it. "You don't understand how this looks," he said. "This will follow us." Us. The word arrived late. I replied. There was no us when decisions were made. He stepped closer. "Can we not just move past this?" he asked. "For the sake of the marriage." I looked at him for a long moment. "You didn't protect me," I said. "Not once." He opened his mouth, closed it. "I helped you when you first came here," he said finally. "I stood by you then." I nodded. "You helped me survive this country," I said, "but you never helped me survive your family." The room went quiet. That was the sentence. The one he had no answer for. He sat down slowly. "I didn't think it would come to this," he said. I replied. It always comes to this, when silence is chosen over truth. He looked tired now, not defensive, just small. So what happens now? He asked. I did not answer immediately. I did not dramatize it. I will step away, I said, from the family, from the expectations. He swallowed. And from me? I looked at him. You already stepped away, I said. I am just acknowledging it. He shook his head slightly. You are overreacting, he said, almost to himself. Overreacting. The final dismissal. I felt something settle then. Not anger. Finality. I am reacting accurately, I said. He stood up. This isn't how marriage works, he said. I replied. Marriage requires alignment. He laughed softly, without humour. You always talk like this is business, I answered, because values are not emotional, they are structural. He stared at me, as if seeing me clearly for the first time. I can't fight my family, he said. I nodded. I will not fight myself, I replied. He looked at the floor. When he spoke again, his voice was quieter. So that's it. I nodded once. That's it. He picked up his jacket, paused at the door. I wish you had just endured it, he said. I answered, without raising my voice. I endured enough. The door closed behind him. I did not follow. I did not cry. I sat down, alone, and for the first time in a long while the silence did not feel like abandonment. It felt like clarity. If you have ever realized that love without protection is not love at all, comment number 11 now. And stay with me, because what comes next is not loss. It is release. The decision did not arrive suddenly. It settled, quietly, without urgency, without fear. The next morning, I woke up at the same time as always. I made tea, not coffee. I stood by the window, long enough to notice that the street sounded the same. Nothing outside had changed. That mattered. I packed slowly, not everything, only what I needed. Clothes I actually wore, documents, my laptop, a notebook I had not opened in months. I left behind objects that belonged to the idea of us, gifts, photographs, things chosen together because they were supposed to mean something. I did not throw them away. I simply did not take them with me. I wrote a note, not emotional, not long. I thanked him for the years when we were aligned, for the help he once gave me when I needed it. I did not accuse. I did not explain. I ended it with one sentence. I am choosing peace. I placed the note on the table. Then I left. The flat I moved into was small, quiet, clean. It had nothing in it except light and the sound of my own footsteps. I slept well the first night, not because I was relieved, but because there was no tension to manage, no atmosphere to adjust myself to. In the following days, everything became practical. A solicitor, paperwork, timelines. There was no argument. He did not contest. He did not plead. Silence, once again, did the work. I signed the papers with the same hand I signed contracts at work, steady, clear. I did not ask for more than what was mine, not out of generosity, out of clarity. I returned my ring, placed it in a small box, left it at reception, no message attached. Some endings do not require explanation. People ask questions. They always do. I answered simply. It was no longer aligned. That sentence confused them. I let it. I focused on work. Long hours. Structured days. Numbers are honest. They respond to input, not emotion. I found comfort in that. Evenings were quiet. I cooked, read, sat with my thoughts without having to translate them. There were moments when I noticed the absence, not of him, of effort. The effort to be acceptable, to soften myself, to wait. I realized how much energy that had required, and how little I missed it. One afternoon, I received a message, not an apology, a question. Are you sure? I did not respond. Certainty does not argue. I visited my mother. She did not ask for details. She made soup. She watched me eat. That was enough. Weeks passed. The noise faded. The wedding became a story told without me in it. That felt right. I did not feel victorious. I felt intact. There is a difference. Leaving is not always dramatic. Sometimes it is simply accurate. If you have ever chosen stillness over noise, comment number 12 now and stay with me, because the ending is not loud. It is clean. The story reached me days later, not through anyone close, not through a message meant for me. It arrived the way these things always do, quietly, indirectly. A headline shared in a group chat I was no longer part of. A forwarded screenshot, a sentence beginning with, "Have you heard?" I did not open it straight away. I finished my tea, closed my laptop, let the evening settle. Then I read, the wedding that never happened, the services that were suspended, the confusion, the embarrassment. The way people described it was careful, measured, British. No one used the word blame. No one used the word fault. They said things like, it was unfortunate, it was awkward, it was handled poorly. Poorly by whom was never quite stated. What was stated was the absence, the missing guest, the sister-in-law who did not attend, the woman who had paid for everything and then disappeared. Some people were sympathetic, others were curious. Most were simply relieved it had not happened to them. I scrolled slowly. I noticed how the narrative shifted depending on who was telling it. In one version, the family had been under pressure. In another, there had been a misunderstanding. In another, someone had overreacted. My name appeared, then disappeared again. That felt appropriate. I closed the article. I did not correct anything. I did not defend myself. I had learned that clarity does not need witnesses. Later that week, I passed the venue on my way home. By accident. Not deliberately. It looked unchanged, clean, orderly, as if nothing had happened there at all. That too felt right. Life does not mark moments the way we expect it to. It absorbs them. I went home, cooked dinner, a simple meal. I ate alone without distraction. There was no sense of triumph, no relief that demanded expression, only quiet. I realized something then. The ending had not arrived when the wedding collapsed. It had arrived much earlier, when I stopped explaining, when I stopped adjusting, when I stopped asking to be included. The rest had only been logistics. I received no apology. I did not expect one. I received no explanation. I did not need it. Time moved on, it always does, and with it the noise softened. What remained was not anger, it was distance, clean, accurate. I stood by the window again that night. The street was the same, the sound unchanged. I smiled, not because anyone had lost, but because I had not. The only truth I carried forward was this: self-respect does not require an audience. The story reached me days later, not through anyone close, not through a message meant for me. It arrived the way these things always do, quietly, indirectly, a headline shared in a group chat I was no longer part of, a forwarded screenshot, a sentence beginning with, "Have you heard?" I did not open it straight away. I finished my tea, closed my laptop, let the evening settle. Then I read, the wedding that never happened. The services that were suspended, the confusion, the embarrassment. The way people described it was careful, measured, British. No one used the word blame. No one used the word fault. They said things like, it was unfortunate, it was awkward, it was handled poorly. Poorly by whom was never quite stated. What was stated was the absence, the missing guest, the sister-in-law who did not attend, the woman who had paid for everything and then disappeared. Some people were sympathetic, others were curious. Most were simply relieved it had not happened to them. I scrolled slowly. I noticed how the narrative shifted depending on who was telling it. In one version, the family had been under pressure. In another, there had been a misunderstanding. In another, someone had overreacted. My name appeared, then disappeared again. That felt appropriate. I closed the article. I did not correct anything. I did not defend myself. I had learned that clarity does not need witnesses. Later that week, I passed the venue on my way home. By accident, not deliberately. It looked unchanged, clean, orderly, as if nothing had happened there at all. That too felt right. Life does not mark moments the way we expect it to. It absorbs them. I went home. Cooked dinner, a simple meal. I ate alone without distraction. There was no sense of triumph, no relief that demanded expression, only quiet. I realized something then. The ending had not arrived when the wedding collapsed. It had arrived much earlier, when I stopped explaining, when I stopped adjusting, when I stopped asking to be included. The rest had only been logistics. I received no apology. I did not expect one. I received no explanation. I did not need it. Time moved on. It always does. And with it the noise softened. What remained was not anger. It was distance. Clean. Accurate. I stood by the window again that night. The street was the same. The sound unchanged. I smiled. Not because anyone had lost, but because I had not. The only truth I carried forward was this: self-respect does not require an audience.